Hello, ladies and gentlemen, or as you prefer to be called, fillies and gentle colts. It is DJ Dub back here, back with the second part of Blackout Shelter. Today's reading is called Search Party. This will be a continuation of Chapter 1. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Twilight did something she had never done before when the sun rose. She let Spike sleep in. "What's the occasion?" he asked after the reveal. "I need you to save your energy as much as you can today," said Twilight. She told them about Princess Luna's search party for Tuckaway. "Got any leads?" asked Spike. "Just one." Twilight maced one of the drawings Spike had found yesterday up off a neat pile of her throne. He took a moment to recognize it. There wasn't much drawn on this paper, but it did raise some question. In one corner, there was an illustration of a large tree. It was labeled G.O. ... A wavy line was penciled in between the tree and a square in the opposite corner of the sheet. This was labeled B.S. "It might just be a silly doodle by some bored pony," said Twilight when Spike looked up, "but we have to look into every possibility. G.O. must stand for Golden Oaks." Spike had an idea of what B.S. meant, that he knew better not to say it out loud, and didn't think this investigation would go anywhere. Spike was left in charge of the castle library again, as Twilight went to talk to Fluttershy. "You want Discord's help?" "Not directly," Twilight said quickly. "I just want to tell him about the search party. Who knows? He could be useful." Fluttershy glowed, as she was happy about Twilight's attitude towards Discord becoming less hostile after the chest of harmony had been opened. She took a blank scroll and quill from Pomonia gave her. Twilight looked away. She wasn't too keen to watch Fluttershy send her note. "I've given him the message," Fluttershy said in a would-be attention-grabbing voice. Twilight turned back to her face. "And I've asked him to set you up with an inbox." "What?" Owlicious, asleep in the room upstairs, was lucky not to be disturbed, not even when Twilight shrieked a moment later as the scroll dropped out of her left nostril. "We're all set, bestie," it read. Twilight attempted to look grateful for the benefit of Fluttershy, who was happy to know how helpful her pen pal was being. There was a bit of a complication late that afternoon. Snips and Snails showed up with a long-overdue library book found months ago, when the large oak tree had still been standing. They were bouncing up pride when they finally found it, but they were soon looking rather anxious. Spike suggested that they were afraid to ask Princess if they could have their money back after having to pay a lost book fine. Twilight decided that there was no harm in giving them 2 bits, which she paid out of pocket in order to speed things along, but it did not take a while to adjust the records, as a replacement had already been added to the shelves. This was the second replacement, actually. The first had been a victim of T-Rex attack. As there was no damage to the book Snips and Snails had borrowed, it simply became a second available copy. "We've lost some time," Twilight said to Spike after the moon was out. "We better get going if we want to finish our investigation done before midnight." She magicked the drawing into the air in front of herself and Spike, and they started to follow the line of the castle, through Ponyville, and towards the Froggy Bottom bog. It took a while for them to realize where they were heading. Before they even made it, Twilight slapped her forehead. "We messed up, Spike," she groaned. "We're supposed to start at the library, not at the castle." Spike was no happier than Twilight, but after his last visit to Froggy Bottom Bog, he was at least glad not to have gone there. They returned to the town and made their way to the remnants of Golden Oaks. The burnt bark and charred roots had long since been disposed of, and a hole where the basement one had been filled. Twilight was grateful to the mayor for holding off any plans to replace the library with something else for a while. She and Spike restarted, and it was already past midnight when they once again left Ponyville. Now the curvy line on the paper indicated that they had to go left in the Everfree forest. "I don't know which one is worse," sighed Spike. "What do you think we'll find?" "Hopefully nothing that wants to eat us," replied Twilight, lighting her horn before pushing on. It seemed like lately they had been catching the Everfree forest on a good day. The number of times they'd gone to see Zecora's hut without running into vicious creatures was outweighing the times that they had been ambushed. And now that they knew the safest route to the castle of the 2 sisters, trips there for restoration projects were becoming less and less eventful. Tonight, Twilight and Spike only came across one disturbing thing on their way to the destination. "What is that?" Spike asked from behind a large rock. "I think it's a giant land shrimp," Twilight whispered, eyeing the large green shape. "That's a shrimp?" Spike thought it had to be shaped like a loud holler. Twilight took a cautious step forward. Upon closer inspection, the shape appeared a little transparent. "Oh, it's a land shrimp shell," she said. "We can move on. There's nothing in there." Okay, said Spike, following her, but I hope we don't meet the thing that shredded that shell. What they found instead was a clearing in the forest. It was definitely an area they had never been to. There was a wall of overgrown trees surrounding the flat, grassy mass about a quarter of the size of the Crystal Stadium. There were only 4 trees in this area, about 20 bushes that were no bigger than apple bloom. This is where the map leads to, said Twilight, inspecting the drawing, but there doesn't appear to be anything here. Yeah, no giant land shrimp could hide in here, Spike said, peering around. Twilight looked up at the full moon and decided that its light was sufficient enough to show them everything in this clearing. Let's go a little further, she said. If we don't see anything past that one bush, we'll call this a wasted effort. Spike had been thinking of it like that since they had backtracked earlier. It was already well past both their bedtimes. As they advanced, there was a faint booming noise. They stopped. The noise stopped. They looked around. Let's go back, said Twilight. Spike nodded, and they started to turn around. The silent booming came again. They stopped. The noise stopped. This time, they looked down. Does the ground feel different to you? Asked Twilight. Spike jumped up and down a few times. The booming was louder. Could there be something buried here? He asked. The hard ground beneath them shifted. They stepped quickly backwards and stared down in surprise. A door was opening in the ground. A faint yellow light was coming from what lay beneath, particularly obscured by the emerging head. A green coat, a white mane, a pair of red eyes. Tuckaway? Twilight breathed. The red eyes blinked. They were a little burly and a little twitchy. They looked up at the full moon and then Twilight and Spike. Who are you? Tuckaway asked. I am Princess Twilight Sparkle. I am a recent condoned member of the royal family and appointed by Princess Luna as a participant in your church party. For you! Tuckaway's eyes widened. Princess Luna sent you? Yes. In Twilight, your name is? That's right. Spike thought Tuckaway looked unhinged, but Twilight was too happy about finding her to notice. Want to see where I've been living since I left Ponyville? Offered Tuckaway. May I? Tuckaway receded back in an underground dwelling. Twilight and Spike followed her, leaving the door open upon Tuckaway's approval. Twilight and Spike were impressed. They were standing in an underground bunker. 2 dim lanterns hung in opposite corners. On one side was a cot with a white sheet and blue-green duvet, a wide wooden pantry, and a pool table. On the other side, there were mostly books and bottles. There were also shelves and another table, but books and paper were nearly covering everything. In the middle, there was a square door in the ceiling, a downspout that hung into a wooden barrel, and Tuckaway, who looked almost messy as the other half of the bunker. Her mane and tail were unkempt, and her wings were hanging down by her sides. So why have you been looking for me? Tuckaway asked. Well, you moved out of... Twilight wasn't sure she should mention Golden Oaks, as she wasn't sure how Tuckaway would take the news of it being blown up. You moved out of Ponyville, she said instead, and no one knew where you went. The royal family was worried when no one could tell them what happened to you. The royal family? These ponies who have been helping Princess Luna and try to find me? Asked Tuckaway, her eyes still blearily. That's right, answered Twilight. May I ask why you've come here and what you've been doing since you left Ponyville? Tuckaway appeared more alert now. Why don't you summon Princess Luna? I preferred not to explain everything twice. Yes, I suppose. Here! Tuckaway shifted over to the messy side of the bunker and beckoned Twilight to join her. Here's the parchment and ink. She proclaimed a clean scroll in a small pot. Thank you, smiled Twilight, magicking the items out of Tuckaway's outstretched hoof. Twilight had heard of scented inks, but she had never come across one until tonight. Mint, she said, inhaling a few times before beginning to write her note. She wrote her message of success and the location of the whereabouts, requested their presence, and ended with her signature. Ooh, it still smells like mint, grinned Twilight, sniffing the letter once more before giving it to Spike. Tuckaway watched as Spike set fire to Twilight's letters. There's a jug of water in there, if either of you are thirsty, she said, indicating to one of the pantry doors. Don't drink out of the barrel here. That's where I bathe. Thank you very much, replied Twilight and Spike. Twilight had herself a drink along with Spike, and then decided to write another note. This one for Discord. She turned away from Tuckaway so she didn't see her slide her second rolled-up scroll up in her nose. Tuckaway, may I borrow your bed sheets? She asked once her letter was gone. I want to make a marker for the princess. By all means, she said. I don't think I'll be needing them anymore. Twilight happily collected the white sheet and blue-green duvet and flew out of the bunker. Spike yawned, his mouth wide enough to make a Tazul worm jealous. You're still a baby dragon, aren't you? Asked Tuckaway. Uh-huh. Probably shouldn't have let Princess Twilight take both those bed sheets. Tuckaway chuckling lightly. We could play pool if you like. Might keep you awake. Spike agreed. He never played pool himself, but he'd seen Applejack and Rainbow Dash play once. However, his sleep deprivation really took hold of him just as he grasped his cue. He stumbled backwards, fell on his tail, and hit the table covered in books. His cue struck a book, knocking it off the table and onto his face. Spike's sleepiness dissolved. Mint-scented poison, he gasped, repeatedly taking in the page in front of him. Weakening any magical creature who sniffs it? Tuckaway's expression was causing Spike even more panic. Your regime is about to fall dragon, she snarled. Spike called to the open door in the ceiling. Twilight! Twilight! No reply. She grabbed his cue, backed up, ran a little way, then the pole vaulted up to the exit. Spike appeared above the ground just in time to see Twilight, her bedsheet marker finished, kneel over. Twilight! He ran to Twilight and shook her hoof. Twilight was groaning. Her face was kind of glum looking. Her legs were stiff and her eyes weren't moving very fast. She looked as she was having a silent sulk fit. Twilight, please, say something! Twilight only managed to say, Spike? Before continuing to groan dully. Twilight looked down into the bunker. He didn't have a chance to start on Tuckaway. She started barking as soon as he appeared. I saw the signs. I read the Mirror and the Moon. I knew my Nightmare Moon was returning. I knew she'd overthrow Princess Celestia and take the throne as Princess Luna, the Princess of the Night. I knew she'd destroy Equestria with eternal darkness. She flew around the bunker, grinning like Berry Punch after a pint. I've been down here researching my flank off ever since the Summer Sun celebration. I've been trying to find a way to sneak poison into Princess Luna for who knows how long. Spike's efforts to tell Tuckaway that she had made an awful mistake were fruitless. She wouldn't stop gushing her excitement at her plane coming to fruition. Spike looked back at his paralyzed friend, in panic grabbed him again. There was a familiar shape illuminated by the full moon, and he could tell it was Celestia and Luna approaching the clearing, guided by the neatly arranged bed covers. Then Spike watched in horror as the sisters stopped flying and started falling out of the sky. He saw that they were plummeting towards two trees, which were fairly close together. He eyed the bed sheets. He was hit by inspiration and frantically got to work. As quickly as he could, he snatched up the covers, sprinting near the trees, tied one end to one tree, and stretched the sheets towards the other tree. In the nick of time, he had made a hammock to break the princess's fall. Tuckaway's voice boomed from behind out of the dragon's breath, who wheeled it around. I've done it! I've defeated Nightmare Moon! Luna certainly stood out amongst the white street and blue-green duvet, but Celestia seemed to blend in. Tuckaway hadn't noticed her. The sun will rise again! Goodbye, Moon! Again, Spike's warning of Tuckaway's big mistake fell on her deaf ears. Tuckaway flew away towards Ponyville. Spike examined the two sisters. They both had glum faces and their bodies were stiff. Spike had made an attempt to drag the two of them towards the bunker, but even if his fatigue hadn't taken hold of him, he couldn't have managed to do it alone. I'm going to try and find an antidote, Spike said, and repeated to Twilight as he passed her on his way to the door on the ground. All right, fillies and gentle colts, that is the conclusion of the second chapter, Search Party, of Blackout Shelter. So, again, thank you for tuning in and listening to my voice. This time, I'm not trying to be, edgy or anything, but could you please leave comments letting me know if I was good or not, because I saw no comments in the last video, and I was just wondering, but that's all. See you later, guys. Peace.